As we're a few weeks into the semester, there is something that I want all of you to know about Photoshop from this point on. It's really important to me that you understand, and it's going to be confusing for a minute, that the color in Photoshop is, I'm not going to say it's not real. It's just not what Photoshop is based on. I want to show you what Photoshop is based on. And what I've done is I opened up this original face JPEG here, which was RGB, and I saved it and converted it to CMYK. So I can show you what happens with plates. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So I'm going to click in the channel palette, not on the composite CMYK channel, but just the cyan channel. Now, where did the cyan go? The answer is, it's there. And this is what the printer uses for density. Now let me explain. So when this job is printed at a printer's, it goes through 4 processes, 4 plates. It runs through the press 4 times. First they print the cyan, then they print the magenta, then they print the yellow, and then they print the black. Now let me show you what I'm talking about. So down here in the swatches palette, I've opened up what the CMYK palette is right there. And you can see the color for cyan. It's right there. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Large thumbnails. Okay, so let me come down here. See the cyan? There's the magenta, and there's the yellow, and then black is black. Now I want to show you something pretty cool. Okay? So I'm going to start with the black plate and the cyan plate, but I'm going to click them on together. So let me click to the black plate. Now watch this. As soon as I marry and click the eyeball on just the cyan channel, there's the cyan. So this is cyan with the black plate. Now I'm going to show you what the cyan plate would look like all by itself, more or less. Okay? Over here I've started something, and I want to click away from this before I'll come back to it. But do you see all of these plates? See how that's cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Now what I've done is I'll turn off this upper original. I have made those same plates. Look at how this is just for demonstration purposes. There's the black plate, there's the yellow plate, there's the magenta plate, and there's the cyan plate. Okay, now the reason why it's not showing up as good as those other ones is because I have them on, let me make sure that I have them on normal mode, yes, and that I have them on, I want you to see how that's the cyan, that's the true magenta, that's the true yellow, and that's the true black. Now, we're going to make these actually have color so I can give you a visual understanding of what Photoshop is. Okay, so and every time I click up to the original plate, it's a composite of 4 plates. So this original CMYK layer that you guys see in Photoshop is based on, as I've said, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And as dark as the black is in the magenta plate would be as full as the magenta color is. Get it? As light or white shows up in the magenta plate, it shows no magenta. So when this runs through the magenta ink for the printer, wherever you see the darkest dark is where the darkest magenta is going to be. Now the same holds true for cyan. Wherever you see the darkest dart in this plate, the printer puts this plate as the item to be copied to every piece of paper. Then they pour cyan into their inkwell and they run it through the press, and wherever the darkest dark is wherever the darkest cyan is. Same is true, as I've said, for magenta, yellow, and black. Now let's show this in a really cool way. So I'm going to click back up to the CMYK plate. So I want you to consider that Photoshop is really a black and white application that uses color, and where it puts the color is how strong the black is on each of these channels. Basically, that's as simple as I can say it. But let's now show it. So I'm going to turn off this RGB image and I'm going to turn on the cyan plate. So there's the same plate that you saw a minute ago, but to show it accurately, I have to go like this. So please memorize cyan, magenta, yellow, and black and what these look like. Because when I turn this off, those are going to change, right? Okay. So here's the cyan plate. I'm going to double click the name. Now I'm going to put a layer above it right there, and I'm going to Option or Alt clip it to that layer. Now we're going to click, watch the foreground color, we're going to click to the cyan color, make sure this is selected over here, and I'm going to hit Alt or Option Delete or Backspace. Now I'm going to change the mode of that to color, and I'm going to change, it's something called solidity, but realize that they print at about a 60% solidity factor. So there is really what the cyan plate is, but you see it like this. Okay, now let's do the same thing for magenta. Now let me name this the cyan color. So let me go like this. Whoops, I didn't do that right. I did not do that right. So let me go cyan color. Now let me turn this off. I don't want to go fast here. So now there's what the cyan plate looks like. We turn it off. In fact, I'll even color code these so they get like a blue color. Now let's go to the magenta. Let me hit Command C and make a new layer above it. Let me automatically clip that layer to here, and I'm going to name it magenta color. Now, let me save my file. Now I'm going to fill this with magenta, so I'm going to click to magenta. Now, as I have magenta in the foreground color, all I'm going to do is go Option or Alt Delete or Backspace. Now let's turn on the magenta plate and make the mode of this go from normal, which is opaque, all the way down to the color plate, and change the solidity to the 60%. Now that's how Photoshop sees this plate. There is your magenta, but now this is what I want you to think of it as. So when you see this and it says it's a magenta channel, this is really what you should be thinking or seeing. Now let's do the same thing. Let me color these a pretty color. I don't know why, but I'm doing it. Whatever. Okay, now let's go to the yellow plate and turn it on. Let's put a layer above the yellow plate. Let me double click this and hit Command C, and then let me double click this and hit Command or Control V and just say color. It's really important that you guys understand what Photoshop is all about, because as you see when I go on to the Jeep and I change the color on the Jeep, I really want you to understand what I'm doing. But let's continue. So now I'm going to Option click between the layers to clip the yellow. Let's click on the yellow color for CMYK, Y being yellow, and let's Option or Alt Delete fill it. Now what mode do I put it on? Yes, you are correct, it's yellow. What solidity factor should I go to? It's about 60%. Now there's the yellow plate. This is what the yellow plate looks like in channels. This is what I want you to think of it as. Okay? And sometimes the solidity factor can be changed. I think that one would go more towards an 80. So I'm now going to go like this. I'll shift click on both and I'll color that yellow just so I have a nice color code. Now let's do the black plate. So let's turn it on. Now the black plate is just simply black, but I want to do the same thing I did before. So I'm going to double click this and hit Command C, make a new layer, clip it by holding the Option or Alt key, double click that and hit Command V and say color. I should say plate, but I didn't. Okay, now let's just make this go all the way to the bottom right so it's fully saturated black. All right, doesn't really matter which one of these I choose. It's just fully saturated black. So I'm going to hit Alt or Option Delete. Now what do? I put that on a color mode. And now you can see what the true black is. That was the plate, there's the true black. Now let's choose a gray for these so I can just have them color coded. Now let me hit Command S to save. So there is really what you're supposed to be seeing. Let's show the yellow plate and the color. Let's show the magenta plate and the color. Let's show the cyan plate and the cyan color. Now I'm going to turn this off and we're going to go back to the original image. So I wanted you to see what process it goes through when it gets printed. And if you look over here in the layer palette, this is the definition. I'm going to do it again, I'm sorry. This is the definition of cyan. Where the black is full cyan. Where the white is no cyan. Where the gray is some cyan. You got it? Okay, so I'm going to turn this off and click back up here and close my plates folder. Now, in doing that, I want to show you something cool again. So let me click only on the cyan plate, and now the color will show up when I marry it with the black plate. You see? So even though you didn't see color there, it's coded to be pure cyan. Do you get it? Now you don't see cyan when I click this on in the white area because white, now listen to my words, white eliminates and black retains. What does that mean? That means white eliminates the color because there are no pixels there to color. Black shows all the color because there are full pixels there to color. That's as far as I want to go with that explanation. Now let me turn off the cyan plate and turn on the magenta plate. So now you see the magenta plate in channels like this, but Photoshop sees it like that. Got it? So when the printer prints it, they're going to take the magenta ink, put it in their printer, run this as the magenta plate right there, and then wherever white is, there's no magenta. Wherever black is, there's full magenta, or a mixture of full magenta. Where there's 90% dark, there's 90% magenta. Got it? Now let's show it with this again, and now I turn off the magenta plate and I show you the yellow plate. Now watch as I combine yellow with magenta with cyan. Boom, you see full color. But that's not how Photoshop is coded. So I wanted you to know from the very beginning that Photoshop is not a color application. What is it? It's black and white. So let me click to away and click back on this. I have to turn this off. Let me click back on and turn this on. Okay, this should be taking. I don't know why it's not taking. So I want to click, there we go. I had to click up to the CMYK layer to show you there is full cyan, there's magenta, there's yellow, there's black, and it's my proof that Photoshop is a black and white application, and they throw color at you based on the amount of black and white in each plate. Okay, that was super important for me to show you. Now I'm going to go to the Jeep because I want you to see how to add color to a white Jeep. Well, based on what you just saw, there is no depth of value for the color to work. Now, the reason why, and I want to go open up something else, the reason why, and it should be right here, let me go down, and just bear with me here, please. Let's go to the image manipulation, and I want to go to my PSD file of my Jeep alone, right there. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I want to show you this. Why does Hue and Saturation work on this file, but it won't work on a white file? The answer is because the layer underneath has value. It has darks and lights. So, when I add a Hue and Saturation layer to this, and I decide, look, and I decide if I double click this to change the color to something, the reason why the red can change to blue or purple or green is because there was value underneath. There was intense light and dark. And I'm going to say it, there was black and white to the plate underneath. Do you understand? Now, that means that we are allowed to change color based on you guys having chosen something that had color previously. Aha, there's the issue. So let's go back, and you see how I'm doing this, and I'm always going from window to this because I got rid of my tabs. If you hold Command and above the Tab key is a little thing called a tilde key. Look at your keyboard. You have Tab and above it is tilde. I can toggle through all of my tabs if I go Command tilde. Now let me go back to the Jeep. Now let's make this work. So how do you make it work, Brian? If I try to add this color to, I have to turn that off. If I try to add, I need to move this down here for a second. But let me turn it off and let me clip it to this. Let me see if I can do this. Yes, I can, but I need something. So just bear with me for a second, okay? I have to add, I have to leave that on, and I want to add a mask to that layer, and I want to use this right now to add the mask to that layer. So let me go like this, click this, and now I have what I wanted, and it's kind of what I wanted, but I didn't want all of the windows and the tires to have it. So you see this mask that's over here? I have to actually add to that mask. So just bear with me here, okay? Because I want you to see why isn't that orange working. But I don't want it to be where the windows are or the headlights are or the tires. So I'm going to get rid of this mask right now and delete it. And in a minute, I'll actually make it right. Okay, I'll add a new mask. So I'm going to use a combination of this. I'm going to Command click this white, which is this white path, which is the whole sheet metal right there without the wheel wells. Okay, now I am going to intersect it by holding Command Option Shift or Control Alt Shift with the body to cut out and make accurate the back of it. So now follow my little cursor here. I'm going around the Jeep. Now, as I want to subtract all of these parts, the windows and the shapes, all I have to do is hold the Command or Control key and go Option or Alt, and it changes to a minus sign, and now I can actually click on that, and I've subtracted all the shapes that shouldn't get colored orange or whatever color I want. Got it? Okay. So I actually used a combination of these. Now let me do this again. I made a selection of the body. I intersected it by going Command Option Shift or Control Alt Shift with just the white car. And now I went Command Option or Control Alt Subtract the shapes. It's going to take a while for you to get good at this. But now I can just click the layer mask, and now I have what I want, which was to just have the sheet metal. Okay? And that's exactly what I wanted. Now I want to put the original underneath this and turn it on. So you can see I just have the sheet metal now. Now let me turn on the orange, and you can see what our problem is. And many of you have experienced this problem in trying to color a car that is white. Well, the color doesn't take because the sheet metal has no value. So we have to force that into there. And I'm going to throw away this layer 5 because I want you to see me create it. So I'm going to show you the hue and saturation one, and look at, if I take this and click that hue and saturation icon and I, move it over, it's not doing anything. It's really having a hard time putting full value. I don't know why it's not letting me grab that. Could be because I have too much stuff opened, but anyway, I'm making my point, right? There's not enough value in the car to make that work. And it's changing the color in the background. Do you know why? Do you see how the orange is clipped to this layer right there? I need to also clip the hue and saturation to that layer. Now when I try to slide the color bar, the hue and saturation bar, it should be moving a little bit better and not coloring the windows and everything else. But now let's fix this problem. Okay, it's not a big problem to fix, and I'm going to now show you that we have to intensify anything that was white. Okay, based on what I just said, I actually have a layer here which is just the sheet metal, right? It's only the sheet metal. Now I did that by using these three paths to create a selection, and then I just added a mask to this. Now I'm going to turn that off and show you what I actually showed everyone in another way to do this. So I'm going to click to the original copy right here. I'm going to make a selection of the sheet metal only right there. Now how did I get it down there? I'll show you again. So let me click back up to the RGB image. I'm going to make a selection of the body. I'm going to intersect it, Command Option Shift or Control Alt Shift with the sheet metal. And now I'm going to go Command Option or Control Alt Subtract the windows and the shapes. And then I would go to Select and Save Selection. And then call it Sheet Metal Only. And I'm going to cancel that, but that's how that got down there. Got it? So now I don't have to do those three things again. I can simply Command or Control click the icon here, not the words, the icon. Now look, try to follow me on this, and I'm going to throw this away. And I have to redo the clipping in a minute because I threw away the stuff they were clipped to. Okay? So I'm going to use a command called Control J or Command J on this car, and now I've made a sheet metal. Command J is an instant copy paste. Okay? Same thing would have been if I went Command C and then Command V, or Control C and Control V. Now look, I have the sheet metal, right? Now what do I have to do to that sheet metal for this to work beautifully? I have to hit Command or Control L and bring up levels. And I have to force levels of darkness by bringing the dark here over to the right. Do you see that getting darker? Now, that is giving me value to work in. Now, if I pick up the white and I bring back the highlights, I have a really good plate. Did you hear my words? Plate for the orange to be useful. Now, let's show it. But before I do, I want to Option or Alt click between the layer and between the layer. So now look, there's my orange. Much better than before. And the darker I go with this, the more orange shows up. Now let me show you. I'll Command Z back in a second or Control Z back in a second. But look, I can click on this and I can actually add more orange in those areas. I can increase the orange. But Brian, you're not touching the orange layer. No, I don't have to. It's already orange. This orange is using this as its plate. Got it? Please, it's so important that you understand that. Okay? Now, let me just move it back a little bit or cancel that. All right. Now, let's click on the hue and saturation change. All right? And let's turn on the bottom plate. Now, all I have to do is double click the icon and I can make it any color I want. So I can have a pretty good red car, I can have a pretty good blue car, I can do anything that I so choose. So let's leave it right there. That looks good. And now that works. So your job, if you have a white product, is to draw out the sheet metal, which most of you have done, and then draw out all of these shapes. Now let me zoom in and show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to turn this off, and off. It's very important that you actually have, I'm going to lower the opacity of this Jeep so you can see my path really, really well. Okay? Let me even make it even smaller or less. Can you guys see that right there? Okay, now let's show the paths. So there's the overall body. I'm going to hit the P key, hold Command or Control and marquee so you see all the points, right? That's just the overall car with the tires. This one was the overall car, and I only cared about this part of it here. See how I even went bigger than that, than the car was? Now, in using a combination of these two, if I make a selection by Command or Control clicking on this one, and I go Command Option Shift or Control Alt Shift and intersect it with this, please watch, I'm zooming in, please watch how this will actually now eliminate the bottom of the car where the wheel wells are and fix this back section. So I'll go Command Option Shift click. See how nicely that is? Now I'm going to bring up the shapes for all the parts, and I'm going to go Command Option to subtract those. Command Shift would add them. Well, I don't want that. I want to subtract them. So Control Shift would add them. Command Shift would add them. So I go Control Alt or Command Option Subtract. There is my sheet metal, which I go to select and save selection on, and it becomes this channel right there, which is really a saved selection. And if you guys ever click to that by mistake, just click back up to the regular channel, the main regular channel. Now let me turn this back on to all of its opacity. Let me deselect and show you that we made a plate that was darker than this one was. So we made this from that so that this had power to show its full magenta or orange or green or whatever the heck you want to make it. Got it? So that is how I want you to think of Photoshop. All right? Now, you can stop this right now, okay? But I'm going to show something very simple. All right? So let me turn all this off. And I'll save the file right now, and I won't save it in a minute, okay? Because I want to add a mask to this just to make a point here, okay? Remember I said black eliminates and white retains? Remember I said that? So I'm going to take the B key, make it large. I just want you to understand that I'm going to right-hand click and make it all the way soft in my paintbrush. So the B key stands for paintbrush. I now have black. And when I'm clicked on a mask, this can only be black and white, or it should only be black and white, and the X key toggles this. Okay? Now, I'm painting at a flow probably the most that I would paint, which is 10. Now watch, I can actually paint out the back of that Jeep. For whatever reason, if I didn't want it part of this image, I would paint it out. Okay, it's gone. But is it really gone? If I right-hand click and disable it, no, it was never gone. Black eliminates, white retains. So if I enable that, look at how where the edge is and the edge of this black here, I'm going to Option or Alt click on this to show you. See where the gray is in the mask? Well, that allows for some of the image to show through. White lets all the image show through. Black lets none of the image show through. Gray lets some. So I'll Alt or Option click on this to show you again that if you want it to come back and you've gone too far in the layer mask, just hit the X key and paint it back in. Now I'm not painting in an image. I'm painting white over the black because what? White does what? White retains, black eliminates. So in a way, black and white are all that's important to a mask. And when I say black and white, I'm including gray. In channels, black and white is everything. So as we saw before in this channel, and this is now RGB, here is the red plate for RGB, here is the green plate for RGB, and here is the blue plate for RGB. It's the same process. So let me click back up to the RGB channel. Let's turn this on here. Let's turn on the orange layer, which was clipped to the sheet metal, the new darkened sheet metal. Okay, now I can get rid of this layer mask because it was really dumb, but I just wanted you to understand. And now I'm going to turn on the hue and saturation. So now the hue and saturation has something to work on. Got it? All right. I realize that was a lot, but you've been in the class now for a couple of weeks, and I don't want you to retain all this, everything I said, and there's no lesson that you have to do here, but I wanted you to understand the importance of understanding channels and where saved selections go and how an overlay layer of color actually works. Okay? That's really important. So just back to this, I'm going to command tilde back to that Jeep. The reason why we didn't have to have a color layer on this Jeep, look, we didn't have to have one because there was color on it. So now I only need a hue and saturation layer. If you choose a white Jeep, you need something between these two layers, which is a layer of color. And then if this was a white Jeep, you would darken just the sheet metal. So you'd have actually two layers between the hue and saturation layer and the main layer for the Jeep. Do you understand? And if you don't, refer back to this and refer back to this right here, and you'll see exactly what I mean. Here are the two extra layers you need when something is white. Thanks.